Lord Seventh, is a priest novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 24. Shuffling the cards once again. The juvenile fury of a teen was maintained on Jing Qi's face from the time he left the eldest scion estate, all the way to when he got onto his own carriage. As if it had been putting on an act for too long and needed to rest for a time, that face was slightly wooden in expression for the entire journey he spent sitting quietly in the carriage, pondering things without making a peep. When he arrived at the prince estate, Ping'an, who had been holding back his words on the road, immediately came in close, using his pure and innocent eyes to accuse Jing Qi of once again behaving like a spendthrift. At first, Jing Qi acted like he didn't see him, but he didn't expect the clown to be exceptionally steadfast. He chased after behind him, matching his pace and steps wordlessly, all while peering at him with a look in his eyes that made one's stomach ache. Jing Qi was finally unable to proceed with ignoring him, sighing. Ping'an. Ping'an raised his head, aggrieved. Inhaling deeply, Jing Qi rearranged his words several different times, then choked them all back down, having no choice but to knead the space between his brows. What, you think I spent a lot of money today? It wasn't a lot at all, Ping'an said with gritted teeth. 100,000 snowflakes of silver readily fall in the dealings between gentlemen. One mere disposing of 5,000 taels was being stingy. The implication being that despite that being no small amount, it still wasn't considered a huge sum. If it was for typical contact, then it was a lot. If it was for entrusting someone with work, or enticing them, or buying a life and such, then it was lacking. In Ping'an's opinion, for the sake of a mysteriously redeemed woman, and for the sake of a mysteriously leaping out young master Cai, this coinage was absolutely akin to spending money for nothing, allowing his master to listen to one noise, amuse himself, and be done with it. He utterly could not understand what practical sense there was in his act of coiling around for 800 loops just to drop in on someone and give them money, nearly suspecting that this junior prince was being a wastrel for the sake of being a wastrel. Jing Qi sighed again. When a lot of money is given, then that which you're seeking out will inevitably be a big deal. I only gave that bit of tripe today. If the generosity was too heavy, Helian Zhao would be suspicious and on guard. It isn't my design, it's simply that more can't be given. Of course, it can't be any less, even more so, as I, your master, am now in the eyes of every gentleman in the capital as precisely such a squandering, willful moppet. Wouldn't giving him less make him uneasy? Ping'an couldn't wait to shed tears until the break of dawn. Those two things were both for the sake of hiding one's brilliant light in the dark. That privately met songstress was for hiding it. Was this immense expenditure also to hide it? He became aware of his own dimness, only feeling that this herd of phonily proper, falsely business-like masters were saying that they were beyond helpless, but were actually all enjoying themselves. Jing Qi extended out a hand, and Ping'an, well-trained, immediately poured him some tea and brought it before him. After moistening his throat, the former went on. For today's matter, if Helian Qi was the one sought out, he would either disregard it as something unrelated to him, or seize the opportunity to rope me in or demand for some other object. If the crown prince was the one sought out, he would definitely think that the one coming had some other request to make, and according to how cautious he is, he would never nod his head. Helian Zhao is not the same, however. By nature, he likes for others to defer to him, and he's obsessed with the feeling of omnipotence, wishing that everyone would be like pets at his feet. When they had a request, they would gather in close to curry favor with him, relying on his happiness to bestow them rewards. He paused, then smiled. In his eyes, gold, silver, and wealth might as well be fawning on him to get him to do something, which makes him happy. Moreover, he'll certainly lend a hand for this. Ping An listened on dumbly, continuing to hold the teapot in his hands and forgetting to put it back down. Right now, he could only ask, why? The other gave a slightly grotesque smile, lowering his voice even further in volume. I heard that Minister Cai's sixth concubine, Lady Hu, is only 23 years of age. A real good age, with good looks. I also heard that Lady Hu's health wasn't too vibrant recently, so a doctor was invited to diagnose and treat her. She was actually 2 months along. Ping An's face went red with a bang. Master, why do you know something like that? What's strange about this is that Lady Hu passed some money to that doctor to make him cover the matter up and not let anyone else know. Jing-Chi grinned. Unexpectedly, he was not a generous person, and he resold the information at an additional price to someone else. Young Master Zhou. Ping An's mind was finally starting to get into motion, and he scratched his head. But, this is a good thing, why would she want to hide it? It's because Minister Cai has long been unable to procreate, Jing-Chi answered breezily. As for who the adulterous man is, there just so happens to be an interesting rumor amongst the servants of the minister estate that claims the one breaking in there every night looks a bit like the eldest scion estate's grand steward Zhou. Ping An almost held his breath. Standing up, Jing-Chi added a bit more on. Steward Zhou, while loose, is also sentimental. It's just a shame, as he hates that he wasn't able to come across that beautiful lady when she wasn't yet married. You know what, I'll go be horizontal for a while, first. Call for me in half a shishan. I didn't get enough sleep at noon today, I'm tired. Ping An remained frozen where he stood. Though, he hadn't thought that Jing-Chi would walk a few paces away, only to retrace his steps back. Did you handle the secret purchase of farmland I spoke with you about last time? Only then did Ping An come to, nodding immediately. It's nearly completed. I will give you the account log to look over later. No need, it's fine as long as you know what's going on. The external property will comply with your management, and if you want to keep a few more aides, you can. There's just one rule, whether it's the shop or the farmstead, give anything to me quietly, and don't allow anyone else to know that the money is going to the prince estate. As for the rest, Jing-Chi's eyes curved up as he smiled, I'll trust you with it. Saying so, he turned and left. Ping An's eyes were brimming with hot tears. It wasn't because he was touched, of course, but rather because this master of his, despite losing money fast and not knowing what controlling outflow was still aware that he had to expand the sources of his income. At long last, the heavens weren't being indifferent towards him. Once he had gone, Jing-Chi put away the happy smiling face he had while facing Ping An. Wasn't him scheming like this exactly because his influence was inferior to others? Upon surveying the present court, who could he borrow to raise this eastern wind, apart from Helian Zhao? Why couldn't he have been born 30 years earlier? The Wei Cheng case was stirred up into a tumult. Even Zhang Zheng himself likely hadn't expected that there would be winds of this size blowing in the dynasty. A long string of people were taken off their horses one after the other. At the beginning, it wasn't clear what was happening, but sharp-sighted people could all ultimately tell that this was someone's resetting of the playing pieces. All sorts of folks who fished for personal gains in turbid waters, took financial hits to escape disaster, and threw rocks at others already stuck in a well were cropping up on end, even going as far as to reach the 6 ministries and its 9 ministers. The first to be directly pointed at was the Minister of Revenue, ChiCi. The old man had been showing off his slipperiness and holding a cushy job for his whole life, but in the end, he couldn't safeguard his late life integrity. Helian Pei hadn't expect his personally chosen, trusted official wouldn't afford him any dignity, so, in a rage, he ordered the minister estate to be seized, then banished those inside it to the Daxan mountain range. Caig unseen was frightened upon frightened, and, amidst the period of rapid ups and downs, he went to go meet the great founder before the journey even started. Meanwhile, no one noticed that during the road to their banishment, they were missing a woman surnamed Hu. Jing was also busy, of course, and eager to muddy the waters. The muddier they got, the better, as few within the great hall were clean. Enticing, coercing, suppressing, and adding fuel to the fire, this was the first time in his life that dark bags appeared around his eyes. The result was the Crown Prince's party going from a few powerless, influenceless young folk that had no outlets for their brilliance and talent, to ones beginning to have their own budding authority for the first time. Wei Cheng ultimately died quietly in the Court of Judicial Review, and it was reported as a suicide. What actually happened was something everyone understood well. No one had been counting on this insignificant, dead imperial eunuch to actually bite Helian Chi. At this juncture, he caused His Second Highness to be in dire straits and unable to juggle more than one trouble at once, which had since made those concerned secretly chuckle. Furthermore, old Jiang's original intent to ring the alarm for the monarch on the key issue in the northwest had contrarily been written off by the exhausted emperor as "my good subjects are thinking too much," then dismissed. In private, even Lu Shen couldn't help but lament a man in the middle of court could be compared to a small boat going into the ocean, which had the possibility of coming across 3 tall waves with no wind. No one knew which direction the wind was going to blow in, and could only watch for who would have the last laugh. The vast longevity festival for the long-lived gentleman drew nearer and nearer. Jing Qi arranged a feast to express his thanks to Helian Zhao. Following their interaction, Helian Zhao's final bit of suspicion towards him had disappeared. Thinking to himself that this was just a 15-ish-year-old that hadn't yet donned a pin crown, he was thus self-confident that he hadn't misjudged a half-grown child such as he. Jing Qi's attitude towards him had been somewhat incompetently courteous from the start, but he had already become affectionate, casual, and increasingly wanton, actually sharing some common language with Zhou Sile. Having obtained the beautiful concubine Lady Hu, and despite telling outsiders nothing of the subject, Zhou Sile couldn't avoid possessing a bit of a favorable opinion towards Prince Nanning, who had quote-unquote taken it upon himself to make trouble on his behalf. In his frequent contact with him, he discovered that the other was also proficient in mucking about, and when they chatted about romantic, exciting affairs, there was an abundance of the sense that he was a close confidant. As soon as Helian Zhao came in the door, he got impatiently tugged at by Jing Qi. "Come this way, Your Highness. There's something good for you to see." Being one who had entered the ranks before, Helian Zhao was hardy and strong-bodied, so he naturally wouldn't allow him to pull him anywhere. However, due to being in an extremely good mood recently, he didn't mind it now, going along with his force to scamper a few steps off with him. "Why are you so anxious? What kind of treasure could it be?" he asked with a smile. Jing Qi smiled back. "You'll know when you see it." While he was speaking, he brought him into a small garden. It was an extraordinarily elegant place, with 2 shedding plum trees at its entrance, a row of bamboo stalks at its back, and a multitude of pavilions and gazebos everywhere, perfect for composing poems by the winding waters. It was small in scale, but lying within this exquisitely carved jade bracelet was an air of ancient minimalism that did not get lost in the craftsmanship. Jing-Chi led Helian Zhao to a seat, then permitted Zhou Sile do the same. In terror, the latter hurriedly stated that he didn't dare to do so, declining the permission over and over again until Helian Zhao nodded, and only then did he sit down at the side. The food and wine had already been set up. "Come bring it here," Jing-Chi ordered. A short moment later, a pretty woman wearing silk seemed to float her entire way over, coming in with tiny steps. The smell of an exotic fragrance infiltrated the garden center in a flash, and everyone automatically inhaled deeply. A captivating shadow slanting, a mystical fragrance wafting about, Zhou Sile couldn't help but praise. The beauty's head was lowered with a shallow smile. When she started to bend her knees in a blessing bow, Helian Zhao and the rest of them then noticed that she had a kitten in her arms. "Your Highness, Brother Zhou, you've both misunderstood," Jing-Chi said with a smile. "This fragrance does not come from a human." "Where is it from, then?" Helian Zhao wondered. Jing-Chi beckoned to her. "Bring it over so that the eldest highness can smell." The beauty came up close before them, showing the kitten she held to Helian Zhao. It was no bigger than the two palms of an adult man, and its entire body was snowy white. There was a pinch of pointed brown fur on its forehead, resembling a widow's peak that a human would have. "Have a sniff, Scion," she said softly. "Does it have that scent?" Helaine Zhao came forward, then smelled it. Sure enough, that unique fragrance assaulted his nose. He clucked his tongue in amazement. "There's even more excitement yet," Jing-Chi said happily, giving the woman a meaningful glance. A young servant next to him passed a xiao over to her, and she took it, placing the cat onto the ground. After only a few notes to test, the kitten was seen to promptly go on the alert, straightening out its neck with both eyes going perfectly round. The sound of the xiao became a melody, and, as if it understood, its front paws left the ground, after which it swung its hips around. Helian Zhao stared at it, wide-eyed, and after the performance was done, he personally stooped down to pick the cat up. This is a rare creature. He didn't necessarily like the thing much himself, but he had instantly remembered that the vast longevity festival was almost at hand, so giving it as a present was probably tantamount to invoking that man's favor with a mountain of gold and silver. "You have given me vent to my anger, Your Highness," Jing-Chi cheerfully replied. "Unfortunately, this prince's estate is impoverished, and there's nothing that I could give to you. By coincidence, I noticed this creature the last time I went to the Chaminette estate, and thus shamelessly asked for it. At this interval, I intend to be thick-faced by offering borrowed flowers to the Buddha." The smile on Helian Zhao's face went on pause. He set the cat onto the table, carelessly picked up a slice of meat with his chopsticks, then fed it. When he peered at Jing-Chi with a different, deeper meaning, he saw the other looking like nothing was amiss. "The Chaminette gave you something. It's not too good if you give it to someone while keeping that from him like so, right, Prince?" he stated unhurriedly. "Nobles don't take advantage of the kindness of others. I'm afraid it's unsuitable to accept this." "How could that be?" Jing-Chi waved this off. "If he was made to learn that I gave away what he gave me and then kept that from him, wouldn't he run a straw doll through to curse me so that we would never have contact with each other in the future? I explained things to him when I asked for it, naturally." Helian Zhao was somewhat surprised, unveiling the smidgen of an indiscernibly moody smile. "I wouldn't dare to accept the Chaminette's rare animal. Since time immemorial, if no merit is made, then no reward is to be received. Jing-Chi pondered this. How would you be receiving a reward without merit, Your Highness? He asked nonchalantly. I owe you a favor. He also owed me a favor from a time before. This time, he's happening to take my place in thanking you. Helian Zhao wasn't sure if Prince Nanning was a genuine idiot or a fake one, and he couldn't help but give him a look. This owed favor wasn't like owed money, so how could it be calculated like this? Besides, Jing-Chi proceeded, he has constantly remembered that when he was young and freshly arrived, he had made mischief in the Great Hall. Only later did he learn that he had brushed off your reputation, and he feels very apologetic about that on the inside. He also didn't speak to you out of fear that he would irritate you into further displeasure were he to rashly drop by your door. He's always been ruminating on how to express his regret. He intentionally involved Wuxia, despite knowing he wouldn't want this. Helian Chi had the Nanjiang's black shaman stashed away. Once that got disclosed in the possible future, Helian Zhao was certainly not going to let that opportunity slide, and he'd bite down on it without ever letting go. People of the Great Qing didn't distinguish between black shamans or white shamans, as all they knew was that they shared one name, and were all called Southern barbarians. When that time came, Helian Zhao was bound to be trouble, and would surely drag the unpleasant-looking chaminette down into the water during his mad rush. Having secret ties with a foreign race, hiding away assassins, fiddling with shaman craft, any which one of these was ground for a mortal offense. Sighing inwardly, Jing-Chi thought, don't blame me, you toxic little beast. This is called preparing for a rainy day in order to preserve your puny life. However, he didn't anticipate that Helian Zhao would mumble to himself for a short moment, then suddenly ask, I heard that the Chaminette estate is nearby. Yeah. It's not even a few steps away, so why don't we just get him to come over and join in the fun? Jing-Chi froze immediately. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.